I turned it off.
It says the meeting is being live streamed. I consent to be live streamed and recorded too. That's okay. All right. It's now 5:30. So I'm going to call to order the City of Indio Sustainability Commission special meeting. Oh, this is a special meeting of October 25th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. This is a virtual meeting. And so the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. As you can see, we all have a picture of the flag in front of us. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, that was close. Can we have the roll call?
Chair Patterson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Benson?
Here.
Commissioner Tack?
Here. Okay, so we have a quorum. We're going to go ahead. And is there any public comment?
No, there are no comments.
All right, so the fifth item on the agenda is Energia, Margaret Laub, Project Development Manager. I guess Margaret's going to give us a presentation.
Yeah, I asked Margaret to talk about her company a little bit today because in our sustainability plan under clean energy, part of our work plan was to keep up and keep learning about things like digesters or other different kinds of renewable energy that may be available to us, and as that technology progresses to keep kind of tabs on what's going on out there. So I asked Margaret to talk a little bit about what her company does and some of the projects that they're working on. Margaret?
Great, thank you, Sarah. Well, thank you all for having me, and I appreciate, Sarah, you getting everything set up and coordinated. I will go ahead and try to share my screen. Let's see. Can you all see my screen all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Great. Well, my name is Margaret Laub. I am a project development manager with Energia. We specialize in waste to energy. We are a mission-driven company working to develop a zero waste future. What that means to us is developing or acquiring solutions to recover organics that would otherwise go to landfill and emit powerful greenhouse gases, primarily in the form of methane, and instead process those recovered organics into renewable energy, fertilizer, and clean water. Ideally, when we're doing this, we're seeking to leverage existing infrastructure in the communities, namely at wastewater treatment plants. And we really see ourselves as the enabler to connect the dots between where organics can be recovered and where they can be recycled into valuable products. I should say we're based in Carlsbad, just north of San Diego. It's quite dark and rainy here, so we're not too far of neighbors. So how we do this waste to energy is by manufacturing end-to-end technology solutions, primarily as a tool to enable turnkey projects. We recover the waste, as I mentioned, in a clean form so that it can be anaerobically digested. We create capacity for new waste streams in existing waste infrastructure at wastewater treatment plants. And then we seek to generate value from that. So really, you'll see here, our suite of solutions breaks down into three parts. That's starting with the orange is the pre-treatment or waste recovery. That's typically happening outside of wastewater treatment facilities, at transfer stations and MRFs elsewhere in the community. And shifting into the green on the energy production side, That's converting that recovered waste into energy, processing it through anaerobic digestion, and generating carbon negative pipeline quality renewable natural gas, or fuel for fleets, or power to support the wastewater treatment plants and advance energy resilience and energy neutrality. That's something that's becoming more and more important, especially as rolling blackouts and public safety power shutoffs continue to be a thing of the future, or of the present, and more so in the future. Lastly is nutrients recovery. That's taking anything that's not digested and finding a marketable or sustainable outlet for disposal and creating or capturing as much additional value as possible. So ideally through these technologies, we can provide whatever solution to support a community's ability to accept high strength waste and address any other pain points at an existing wastewater treatment plant, whether it's delivering operational improvements, capital improvement needs, better biosolids management. So providing that benefit in addition to primarily regulatory compliance, which is the big issue right now with SB 1383. So here's a selection of some of our projects on both the solid waste and wastewater side. I'll go through some of these as case studies in a little more detail further on in this presentation. All of these that you see here are either in construction or operational. On the top half is our solid waste and organics recovery portion of our projects, and on the bottom half is wastewater and organics processing into energy projects. You'll see a range of not only technological solutions, but also project delivery models. We do any permutation of design, build, own, operate, finance, P3, essentially, to really try and be an enabler and deliver whatever project model makes most sense to suit an agency's needs. So setting the stage, just kind of taking a step back from what we do, it's not much of a surprise that methane is a huge issue and even a bigger problem than we previously thought. Methane is much stronger than carbon dioxide in the near term in terms of being a greenhouse gas, although it breaks down faster. CalRecycle has previously listed landfill methane as the #3 source of methane in the state, primarily from when all of the organics in our trash goes to landfill. As it breaks down, it releases methane. What we're actually finding recently, this is the result of NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory flying drones across the entirety of the state and analyzing what's going on the ground below them, is that landfills and the organic waste decomposing in landfills is actually the #1 source of methane in the state, producing just over 40% of the state's greenhouse gas emissions, or methane emissions, excuse me. So we're continuing to see an increased focus on how do we address methane and stop it being released in landfills. You'll see that reflected in recent messaging from the White House, the recent methane pledge joined by tens of other nations, that really just reinforcing that message that curbing methane is one of the most important things we can do to try and delay the worst impacts of climate change in the near term. So to this end, as I'm sure you all are familiar, enforcement for SB 1383 starts on January 1st of this coming year, which requires diversion of organics from landfill to reduce short-lived climate pollutants like methane, and generate instead renewable energy and fertilizer, which can be used to meet the SB 1383 procurement goals as well. So our goal is to really provide the solutions to not only enable cities and jurisdictions to comply with the regulations, but also generate some value from that, whether it's renewable energy, fertilizer, and capital and operational improvements at their wastewater treatment facilities. While SB 1383 does not directly impact wastewater treatment plants, there's no mandates for them. Everyone's really acknowledged that wastewater treatment plants are a key resource in achieving the goals laid out in SB 1383. They have about half the capacity needed to take on the organics that have to be diverted to achieve these organics recycling mandates, and pose a really fantastic option to recover value from them in the form of renewable energy. Most of this capacity is existing in anaerobic digesters, and the real issue is lining up the right ancillary upgrades to allow them to take them on and make sure that wastewater treatment plants can continue meeting their core mission of protecting the environment and public health. And that's where we come in. So this is kind of just reiterating what I've been talking about so far. Have a lot of visuals in here because I think what we do is a lot of moving parts, and it's a lot easier to try to envision it before you can go see it yourself at some of our operating facilities. So what we do is really work on both sides of things, the solid waste side to recover organics and then connect them as an enabler with the wastewater treatment plant where they can be processed. A key tool in doing that, just diving into it now, is our OREX press. That stands for Organics Extrusion. It acts like a giant garlic press to take any waste stream, whether it's contaminated SSO, source separated organics, or commingled black bin municipal solid waste. It applies a large amount of pressure, much like a garlic press. The organic waste, what we call wet fraction, squeezes out of about quarter-sized holes at the end of this press, and what's left in what's left in the OREX at the end, the reject plug, goes to landfill. That's all the contamination, and what comes out of it is this. Up in the upper right corner is, again, what we call wet fraction. That's the organic parts of whatever waste stream has come into the facility. So you'll see OREX is a really great tool in processing waste for whatever sort of collection scheme you may have, whether it's 2-bin or 3-bin, whether your city is doing source separated organics. You can see oftentimes there's a large element of human error, and SSO can sometimes be quite indistinguishable from MSW. So the OREX really is a tool to enable to capture whatever organics are in whatever waste stream, regardless of contamination level. Of course, there is still some contamination, so we use the OREX press in system, or OPS, to dilute what comes out of the OREX at about 25 to 30% solids with about 2% contamination, because there are some things like plastic bags and other grit that gets through those holes as it's pressed out. We dilute it into a slurry. We go through 2 additional steps to remove both grit and floatables, so any plastic films that would otherwise end up in a digester. So at the end of this process, you can see, jumping back, it goes from this really heavily contaminated stream to a little bit cleaner, but you can certainly see in the middle, this OREX wet fraction at 2% contamination. There's certainly some things that look like they just don't belong. And at the end, you can see our polished organics, which have less than 2.2% contamination. It's a really slurry-like consistency, kind of like hummus or a milkshake. So just here quickly showing what's removed in that polishing process. And ultimately, this is important because these are things that don't end up in wastewater treatment plant infrastructure down the line. So one quick case study is this OREX and OPS system is both installed at the South Bayside Waste Management Authority up in San Carlos near the Bay Area. Currently, they are processing municipal SSO into about 50 tons per day of slurry, and they are delivering it to a number of wastewater treatment plants within the Bay Area. You can see those 4 here. So the SSO comes to the SBWMA facility, it's squeezed out through the OREX, it's processed and cleaned through the polishing system, and then that cleaned polish is taken via tanker trucks to these 4 facilities where it is pumped directly into their digesters and co-digested along with municipal wastewater sludge. So a key tool that's kind of moving on in our series of tools to help us achieve these goals is our omnivore system. So you'll see South San Francisco is just to the mid-left. It's receiving slurry from SBWMA, where it's being processed through its existing digesters. However, one of their existing digesters has been retrofit with our omnivore system, which is really our kind of the heart of our approach to co-digestion at wastewater treatment plants. It's comprised really of just 2 items to triple capacity in existing infrastructure by removing inert water, freeing up space for new materials to be brought in and co-digested along with the municipal sludge. So one piece is the recuperative thickener, which you'll see on the right. Like I said, it just squeezes out the water that's typically in municipal wastewater being digested in these tanks. frees and sends the water back up to headworks for further processing, and again, creates that additional space that would have been taken up by water for now organics or more sludge to be loaded into the digester. The second piece is a mixer. It's a high torque, low speed propeller style mixer. Moves really slow, like it's mixing through honey, to make sure you're continuing to properly mix and move about materials in the digester now that it's a much thicker material. There's a couple of additional benefits to the system. We have data proving that it's improved mixing versus traditional mixing methods, particularly at increased solids. You're seeing increased destruction of the solids, which allows for production of more biogas. There's less solids to deal with on the back end, which, especially with SB 1383, is continuing to increase in cost for biosolids management. Additionally, these mixers are hyper efficient, so there's reduced O&M cost, as well as keeping all of the grit and just stuff that's in the digester suspended so that it's not settling out, and you can actually extend the time between required digester servicings and cleanings by keeping the mixing as high as it should be. So another case study, and I know I'm going through a lot here, but we do have quite a lot of offerings, and it's kind of just our, I'll say we can kind of piece together what scope makes sense for a wastewater treatment plant to deliver the most benefit for them and for their member cities' needs. Victor Valley, down in Victorville, California, probably not terribly far from you all. We recently we're wrapping up construction of a renewable natural gas P3 there to transform them into an energy exporter. We actually had a phase 1 project there, which initially retrofit their digesters, expanded capacity for them to bring in high strength waste and create enough biogas to power cogeneration engines. That was enough power produced by those engines to be entirely energy neutral. And that was a very successful project. So we here seen an expansion of the project to further retrofit their digesters to allow them to accommodate more high strength waste, produce more biogas, and in fact, upgrade that biogas to renewable natural gas for export to the grid. What that's doing is, in addition to creating carbon negative renewable natural gas, it's generating a revenue stream which Victor Valley gets to take part in. They're receiving lease payments from this project, as well as host fees based on external material that's being imported into the facility for processing and the RNG sales. They're also benefiting from the infrastructure upgrades that were provided for their digesters, for the RNG upgrading, from the CHP, as well as any sort of ancillary goodies that we're able to include in a project scope. For example, dedicated digester feeds to each of the digesters, rather than having a blending tank. Just one of those things that we try to look at how we can facilitate a project and incorporate some capital improvement needs as we're doing this broader energy focused scope. So the P3 with Victor Valley was delivered as a partnership between Energia and Victor Valley. We find that this approach makes a lot of sense, especially for these renewable energy focused projects where it's not necessarily an appropriate use of public funds to kind of take a gamble on what's the RNG commodity market or other energy markets. And you allow an industry partner like Energia to bear that risk, bear the risk associated with permitting and interconnection and other development. You get development efforts, you get to leverage the industry expertise of a partner, while also making sure that the wastewater treatment plant is able to focus again on their core mission and not get distracted in terms of treating wastewater and making sure that public health and the environment continue to be the priority. So this is just a brief overview of the scope that was provided as this project, again, via P3, so Energia Finance, design, build, owned, operate, and we provide maintenance as well. You can see the several digesters were upgraded, 1, 2, and 3, and then the larger 4, 5 down in the bottom left. The biogas from those digesters is collected, brought over to biogas conditioning and upgrading, where it's converted to pipeline quality RNG, interconnected to the Southwest gas grid, and that RNG is injected by Energia to the Southwest natural gas grid and sold on the market. And as I mentioned, Energia financed this, provided all the infrastructure upgrades, and is now operating it. And Victor Valley gets to enjoy expanded digester capacity, as well as the revenue that's brought in via the project. So just one last case study here. This is kind of our crown jewel, a bit of a unique facility, as this, typically we try to partner with municipalities and existing wastewater treatment plants. This was a bit more of a proof of concept facility, in that it is entirely design, build, own, operate, financed by Energia. It's all new greenfield construction of our Rialto bioenergy facility. It's currently accepting 700 tons per day of organic waste from the regions you see highlighted here, as well as biosolids from a couple different municipalities in the area. That's primarily LA County Sand, as well as Orange County Sanitation District. So here's an aerial overview of the facility. It's received, you can see in the top left, this is that wet fraction that's extruded from Orex, and it's actually polished there on site before being pumped directly into these two larger digesters you can see on the right. It also received some liquid waste from other waste haulers in the area. So all of this is organic waste that's being diverted from landfill, where it would otherwise generate methane, and instead being processed through these two large digesters. The methane's being captured in the gas covers you can see on top, look kind of like balloons, that it's upgraded, cleaned up and upgraded, and again, being injected into the SoCal gas natural gas grid as carbon negative renewable natural gas. There's also, as I mentioned, biosolids receiving, where we accept the digested biosolids from other municipalities, wastewater treatment plants. We dry them, and then starting in early 22, we will also be pyrolyzing them, which will provide the benefit of significant volume reduction, as well as PFAS destruction, which, as I'm sure you all are familiar, is continuing to be a growing concern within the community. So this is just an overview. There's a lot going on, and just reiterating what I just described, but really the point here is to show kind of the full end-to-end suite of what we can offer. Rialto is really a demonstration case for all of that. And I'll wrap up with, again, I mentioned this is a lot of information and a lot to get a handle on. So I'll wrap up with an invitation to come out to Rialto Bioenergy Facility anytime. We are constantly hosting tours. My boss shows us 24/7 facility. We can be there for about 16 of them. So I'll pause there for any questions.
I have a question. You hear me?
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
Has there been any calculation of the revenue that's generated from these facilities from the RNG compared with the cost of operating the facility?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I can say is that it's a great model that works for us. We, as I mentioned, as part of the P3, we take on a lot of risk, and we found that the value of RNG at the moment is, and as we anticipate it moving forward, is sufficient to make it a fair investment, right? These are worthwhile projects, and for RNG specifically, it's gotten to the point in the market where it's effectively a slam dunk versus looking at using biogas for some other beneficial use, whether that's boiler heating or digester heating or on-site cogeneration for power. Did that address your question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I don't think the gas pays for the whole system, does it? The revenue from the gas, it doesn't pay for the system. The system is partly justified by the regulatory requirements, or am I wrong about that?
Well, so it really depends on what approach we take to deliver a project. In the instances where we're doing a P3 and we are providing most or all of the financing, the revenue from the RNG, as well as any tipping fees or additional value created by the fertilizer and other kind of marketable products, is sufficient to justify the investment for a private entity.
Oh, okay. So you actually can make money off of it.
Yes, absolutely. And to your point, the current regulatory environment in California is certainly helping that, but it is both with SB 1383 as well as the low carbon fuel standard. But yeah, no, it's been a tried and proven model.
Okay.
If I could follow up on Mr. Patterson's question. So what kind of percentage revenue share would that P3 model be with the city and you guys, if you can estimate what that is?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really comes down to what's included in the project and how much energy is financing, or how much contribution can come from the city. We don't require any, but I simply need to say there's a lot of variables in these projects, as you can probably see, you know, what scope is required to enable those facilities to accommodate the waste, how we're accommodating the waste. But the revenue share can typically be $1 per ton basis for feedstock that's brought in, and then a fixed lease payment. The revenue share will also have an escalation based on CPI each year. And then the renewable energy share will, again, just depend on whether it's electricity, whether it's RNG. But we try to the extent possible to base the revenue share on tip fees for incoming feedstocks, since that's a lot more reliable and can be a little bit more easy for municipalities to forecast out and depend on versus a more volatile commodity market.
So say for example, Victorville, they're receiving a lease payment for the property that the facilities put on. Host fees, what exactly is a host fee that they would receive?
Right, so that's similar to a revenue share. Again, it's based on dollars per ton or per gallon of what feedstock is coming into their facility, what's being processed through it. Again, plus an escalation each year, and then some portion of the RNG sales.
And then what's the infrastructure part of the Victor Valley? What do they receive? What's infrastructure? What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So that refers to the infrastructure that was financed by Energy as part of this project to enable the project delivery, the acceptance of external waste and the generation of renewable energy. So that at Victor Valley, that specifically includes, excuse me, upgrades to all of their digesters. That includes the omnivore that I was discussing earlier, which is comprised of recuperative thickeners and the high solids mixers. The benefit there is that now it kind of provides some future proofing for more flexible operations down the road. You know, if they have increased loads from a wastewater treatment, from a wastewater standpoint, or if they want to bring in more organic waste. So these are items that are directly impacting wastewater treatment operations by providing additional digester capacity that Victor Valley can leverage for treatment. As I referenced a phase 1 type of project with Victor Valley where we delivered cogeneration engines to power the plant. And then the last thing I'll mention is some more ancillary scope like digester feed lines that we included as part of the project just to make things go more smoothly, and that address the capital improvement need for Victor Valley, but then freed up money that had been allocated, could be appropriated to other projects at this site.
So the infrastructure improvements, Victor Valley owns those. You put them in, and part of the deal is Victor Valley is that correct? They own it, or do you guys own the facility?
So here specifically, again, it's a bit flexible, but for this project in particular, Energia does own them. There's an option at the end of the lease for Victor Valley to buy them out. I will say for items like the digester feed lines or more, we try to typically draw, I'll say, a box around what's an Energia facility versus what are just ancillary upgrades to support the project. So you can kind of imagine there's a box drawn around the biogas to RNG, and that's an Energia facility. And outside of that, it's Victor Valley's.
Okay, all right. And then how long typically are the leases that you have with the municipalities?
Yeah, typically it's 20 years, but it's certainly flexible.
Okay. And then I have a couple other questions if you don't mind. What kind of footprint do your facilities need to be able to do this? You know, how much land do you need? And I know
Yeah.
it varies with the different projects, but say, you know, Victorville versus Rialto, you know, how much acreage are they?
Right, so Rialto is just under 6 acres, which is actually quite compact. If you ever get the chance to visit it, I think you'll be surprised, like I was, at just how much we were able to fit in. Victor Valley is a little bit different and similar to more of our municipal wastewater treatment partnership models in that we're trying to leverage as much footprint as we can from the existing digesters. So ideally, there's no new build out there, and what we can really, the value we really offer, especially through something like our omnivore system, is that we're taking existing infrastructure, increasing the capacity and the value of it with a really limited impact on actual footprint. Yeah, so you'll see everything, I guess, on the right-hand side of this photo is existing Victor Valley infrastructure that we've just retrofitted with pretty limited footprint impact. The biogas to RNG is maybe 300 by 100 feet, maybe a little bit more or less.
All right, cool. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, so you use these along with the wastewater treatment plants typically. Are they always combined with a wastewater treatment plant, or is that just one of the potential designs?
Yeah, that's a great question. It certainly does not have to be. As, again, I'll point to our Rialto facility, which is greenfield development. It happens to be adjacent to a wastewater treatment plant, which you can see on kind of the bottom right-hand side, but there's effectively a firewall. We don't have any interaction with them. A lot of facilities are looking at co-locating new digesters at landfills or at existing transfer stations, and that's certainly something we can do, but our primary goal and part of our philosophy is leveraging what's already out there. The California State Water Board has shown that, you know, there's more than enough capacity in existing anaerobic digesters within the state to take all of the organics, or I should say half of the organics, but if you put our omnivore system on there, it triples that. So there's the capacity out there, there's the infrastructure, and frankly, a lot of it's underutilized right now. So we really want to try to the extent possible, leverage existing infrastructure. But of course, we're open to whatever makes sense.
Yeah, I wonder how a project like this might interact with the city of Indio, where, you know, we don't have a wastewater treatment plant, and our solid waste is handled by Vertec. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but we wouldn't have a direct opportunity that I'm aware of to have one of these projects unless Vertec were to do it with us.
We would certainly need to partner with Vertec, but we have, and one of the things that we're going to continue to have in our new franchise agreement with them is what's called flow control. So in other words, if it could work out for everyone, and that includes Vertec, then we could move the flow from going to a compost facility to here. We could direct where the waste goes. That would be an option that we would have. And we have like an MOU with Valley Sanitary District, which is the wastewater treatment plant in Indio. We also have an agreement with the city of Coachella to run our transfer station, and they have a wastewater treatment plant within their city. So we kind of have a partnership that's a baseline in that avenue as well. So that would be kind of a baseline to at least opening the door to two possibilities for working with wastewater treatment plants.
I'll highlight as well for our Victor Valley plant or project. Their board represents, or they represent a number of cities. And so while Victor Valley themselves is not affected by SB 1383, both because they're a wastewater treatment plant, but also because they are not a jurisdiction in and of themselves, they're in a position where they're able to provide this project, realize the benefit of it, and pass it on to their member agencies and the cities that make up their board, right? It's generating revenue that's passed on to their rate base, really. And so it's the cities that are seeing the benefit of it. I know that Valley Sanitary District actually, for example, has one digester, has been potentially looking at building another, which obviously represents a very large capital expense. And so, we've got the solutions to whether they want to build a new digester. The omnivore can, allow them to make it maybe not quite as large as they had initially been planning on, because they can run it in a more concentrated fashion. Alternatively, they can retrofit their existing digester and get more capacity in that way. At the same time, that allows them to produce more biogas, generate, for example, power from CHP to offset their costs, and again, pass on those savings to the cities and members which they serve.
Sorry, go ahead.
When you showed the that compactor that squeezes the liquids out of the solid waste, the solid waste, the part that doesn't come out in the form of a liquid, that would then go to a landfill, or how does that work?
Correct. That's whatever isn't extruded, the reject plug does go to landfill. Typically that's, either contamination in an SSO stream, and so it would go to landfill anyway, or other trash in commingled municipal solid waste. We are able to, you compare this with pre-processing equipment that can scavenge recyclables and other materials out of the waste stream prior to going into the OREX. But yes, you're absolutely correct. The reject does go to landfill.
Okay, so your business model focuses on sounds like the biodigester is a critical element in your overall business plan for Energia?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. I think Morgan had a question.
Yeah, so Margaret, your Rialto facility, in your PowerPoint says the largest in North America, the United States, and it pulls in product from all over Southern California. Do you have does your company have projections of in areas how many facilities like Rialto and also like Victorville and the smaller ones that an area can sustain? So say for example, Coachella Valley decides to go big and do a Rialto facility with the idea that it would pull in product from areas that the Rialto facility does not. Would you does your company kind of go, okay, great, we've got two big giant ones, we're good for LA, Orange County, Riverside County, and San Bernardino County, and you're not going to build another one somewhere else and make the ROI on this hypothetical Indio Coachella Valley facility unsustainable? Does that make sense?
I can try to answer and see if that helps address your question. So there's certainly economies of scale, and we do have rules of thumb in terms of especially if we're looking at a standalone facility like Rialto, where you need to have X tons per day coming in, and X SCFM or MMBTU of gas going out to really make it make sense. And that will vary a lot based on where in the state you are, and who's around, which is why we, that's not always sustainable. That's why we try to look at where we can leverage existing infrastructure and waste that already, needs to be diverted within the community and keep that value within the community to the extent possible. But with these projects, there's a certain chicken and egg element of finding the feedstock and finding the right home for it, and where makes most sense for it, and whether, what's most appropriate in terms of where to recover the waste from and then to transfer it to for processing.
So is that something that your company does in this process? So do you, I'm assuming you're running the Rialto facility, do you have, for lack of a better term, salespeople that go out to different municipalities and say, hey, we want your waste to bring it to Rialto, and here's the deal, and do those contracts and that kind of stuff? Or is it left to somebody else or another entity?
Yeah, so we do handle, both for Rialto as well as for facilities like Victor Valley and other projects where we're a P3 partner. We are responsible for sourcing the feedstock, going out, finding it, making sure it's appropriate quality, and getting long-term reliable feedstock contracts set up. Similar on the back end, we're responsible for getting offtake agreements, established interconnect agreements to make sure that the energy and fertilizer products coming out of these have a place to go to, and that we're all set from that perspective.
Okay, so you handle all that stuff. And my very last question, I promise my very last question.
No problem.
Can you comment on if you've built any facilities and then they have since closed at some point in time?
We're a global company with 1,700 installations. So I can't say from that selection if there has never been something. To my knowledge, in North America, we haven't had anything go under. We, in fact, just recently went public a few months ago on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So we're pretty optimistic about our outlook in terms of how these facilities are doing, how they're seen in the market, how they will continue to do, and especially in light of not only SB 1383 and the regulatory drivers there, but I'll also highlight SB 1440 is anticipated to be going into effect, which establishes a renewable gas procurement standard for the IOUs in California. So effectively creating a market for exactly what we are seeking to deliver through these projects on the RNG side.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your answer to the questions and your presentation.
Great. Well, I appreciate you all having me. If there's no other questions, I'll wrap up and let you all get back to it. But again, thank you for your time. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all, or if you'd like to schedule a site visit up to Victor Valley or to Rialto Bioenergy Facility. We're always happy to host.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good presentation.
Margaret.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
So here we are again, and we have the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for, looks like, June 22nd and October 12th. I think I was absent from the October 12th meeting. But does anybody have any comments to the minutes? No?
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
I'll vote in favor of that. You want to?
All right, I'm just going to go ahead and do the roll call just to do that, and I will. So what I'm going to do the roll call for is that the minutes for June 22nd. For October 12th are approved with Chair Patterson's abstention, and then the June 22nd meeting is just approved. Chair Patterson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Benson?
Yes.
Commissioner Tack?
Yes.
Okay. That's unanimous.
And then we've got the meeting date and time as the next item.
Yes, this came up because Commissioner Benson has a conflict with our current Tuesday night meetings. So we did a special meeting to be able to move the Tuesday meeting this month so we could hold the meeting. But we need to basically take a vote on either a new meeting date or keeping the same meeting date. Ultimately, I think what the best thing to do is, if it's possible, is can we keep a Monday meeting night? And that would mean that Commissioner Benson could continue to be a commissioner.
That's fine with me.
That works for me too.
So make it official, I'll motion to change the meeting day from Tuesday to Mondays, same time, same place.
I'll second that.
So the fourth Monday of every month.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I'll do a roll call vote again. Chair Patterson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Benson,
Yes.
Commissioner Tech.
Yes.
Okay, we have a new meeting date and time. That's excellent.
Thank you, everybody.
No problem.
Yeah, that actually ought to work out really well.
Yep.
Okay, the next item is the sustainability plan and annual work plan draft.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this back. One, to I want to get your opinion on removing the targets underneath our four main goals. I think that it's just too high level to put targets in at this point. I think we have a lot of objectives, a lot of things that we want to reach, but when coming up with targets for each of the low greenhouse gas environment and zero waste and everything else, I think that I just don't know what targets we'll hit. I think they're better placed in our annual work plan when we actually are working on projects and how we're going to meet targets that way. So if it's okay with all of you, I'd like to take the target portion out of each of these goals and just add more objectives.
So take the target out. Oh, I see. Target,
Yeah.
create a mandate,
Right, so let me,
objective.
yeah, I'm sorry. So that one's blank. That's why I was like, I just don't know. So it would be something like this. We have zero waste objectives, but we don't necessarily have targets here. What targets being, what are we going to meet in the next 3 to 6 months?
Okay.
It's just because the objectives cover a lot of things, and I think having targets under each of them would be really difficult to stay on track with, to actually get done. And I'm just afraid that it won't be meaningful, that we'll just start missing deadlines. And
No, I agree, Sarah. We need to stay focused on what we can get done in that shorter time frame.
So the idea, the idea would be to take all the targets out and just have objectives.
yes, and then while we do the work plans, while we do actually these actual projects that we have under the annual work plan, that's where we'll hit. If we're going to have targets, I think they're a better place for them.
Does the targets have to have that 3 to 6 month time frame? Like, can we just, is it possible to sort of have, like, instead of, hold on, let me try and get my thoughts straight here. So maybe, how about the idea of taking targets out of each goal, but creating a target page that sort of summarizes and separates short-term targets with long-term targets. And, you know, because my concern of taking targets out completely is that we sort of lose track of big picture and sort of do with, just we don't shoot high enough, and it becomes this, we just deal with stuff that's on our plate today instead of focusing on medium time frame goals and long-term goals, if that makes any sense at all. I think I just muddled that all up.
Well,
no, I understand.
Let me
what you're
add, Sarah, let me add one comment here. When we apply for grants, they take a look at our overall objectives. And if we start putting in targets that have to be met and then they're not met, that becomes part of that thing that we send out to everybody when we ask for grants. So I'm looking at it as the big picture. I think we can control what we want to do. I'm afraid that if we start promising things that we know we can't do just for the sake of promising them, I'm afraid that's going to make us not look as though we're realistic in our actual goals and targets.
Yeah, you both have really good points. There may be one thing, I believe it's either in the climate action plan or the general plan update, but it has actions or targets ultimately, but instead of having dates, it has low, medium, and high priority kind of things. Maybe that could be a more of a middle ground for keeping a focus on targets.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry completely of not making promises we cannot keep, nor making promises that we have no intention of keeping. But I do think stuff that we want to do, we have to keep focused on. And if we take that target list out completely, and look, we can change the name of it and just have it as a goal list or something like that, or a rough time frame list, or like you're talking about, Sarah, but just have that there so we can keep reminding ourselves of the items that we want to do and plan on doing and hope to do. Maybe we call it a hope list, and that kind of stuff. I don't know, but I see your point of taking it out, and if it doesn't work in the plan, then let's take it out, and if we can replace it with something or find, be great. But that was just my thought.
Okay, let me see what I can do with the list as far as keeping not making promises, but trying to keep them within this plan. How that's done in some other plans, but definitely keeping kind of the promises portion out of it. All right. And the other thing is, this is the first version that has the water portion filled out. So I want to thank IWA for putting in the water resources part of it. And if you have any comments for that, please take a look at it, because that is new in this version. And other than that, I think we're just about ready. I'll bring it back when it's completely polished for a formal recommendation to the City Council, to recommend it to the City Council, but I think it's really close. But I will work out the target thing and bring back any more comments you have on the water resources again, because that's new. And
Sarah, just a side comment, when you're looking at recharging stations for electric vehicles.
Yes.
Yeah, Hertz just bought 100,000 Teslas today.
Wow.
To put in their rental fleet.
Wow.
How many?
100,000.
Whoa. Well, now that you mentioned that, I drove up to the Bay Area weekend before last, and there were these double-decker trucks with Teslas. I don't know how many of them I saw going by me. They're really selling.
Wow.
It's
So I
good.
guess, Jerry, I guess that means that then the airport rental Hertz lots will have charging stations. So that's one thing we don't have to worry about is rental charge stations at the airports.
That's true. But as we look at our plan to add electric charging stations, throughout the 9 cities, and in our particular case, the city of Indio, it'll be important to support that.
Yeah, this is actually, as I was going to bring it under the sustainable environment and land use, but I did talk to our director of community development, and apparently in the 2019 building codes, that charging station plumbing that is so expensive that going to the buildings, it was mandated. It's already mandated since the 2019 green building codes came out. So that should be happening now, and I'm going to talk with him a little further about how we might incentivize that last part of actually adding the charging station.
Yeah, good thought.
All right. And that's all I have for the sustainability plan.
Okay, so the next item then is the low greenhouse environment.
Right, and actually even for that, that's the update for that is that as I just said, the plumbing is part of the code today, and hopefully we'll be able to come back with something that might help incentivize the actually putting in the chargers throughout India so we can have them on private areas as well. That's all I have for the low greenhouse gas environment. And
the zero waste?
yeah, I just wanted to give an update on the Keep America Beautiful project. So we don't, as far as I know, we don't yet have formal approval from City Council that the Sustainability Commission will be administering this thing. But looking forward anyway, the next thing that would be coming up, we have some background application, basic paperwork to do. And then at a future Sustainability Commission meeting, they will actually be in the meeting doing a community training workshop. And at that workshop, we're going to want some folks from the community, because we'll be talking about this second item, complete the affiliation requirements. So we're doing the basic paperwork now, but we'll need to do these focus area research and litter inventory. And a lot of that workshop that's coming up is going to be how to do that and put that together. And that's going to be a little bit, it's proprietary to Keep America Beautiful. So I don't know a whole lot about it yet, but it is going out and kind of looking at the city and using a uniform method to just survey certain areas in the city to put down how much litter is there and keep a record and have kind of a baseline for the city. So the training workshop will ultimately help us to do that. We're going to want to invite some community members to it. Then we have to do those affiliation requirements, and once they're done and submitted, then we can actually become affiliates. And once we're affiliates, then they'll come back and do some more training that's more affiliate training. So we've got a couple steps to go, but those are the next steps. And I think if there's anything that we can be doing in the meantime, or you all can, is if there's anyone in the community or community groups you're thinking might be good at that community training workshop, might be good for them to be there, then that would be what we should be kind of focused on, is who to invite to that workshop.
When's the council going to vote on this?
You know, I have a meeting with the city manager tomorrow, and I'll ask.
All right, cool.
And that is actually, I think, all I have for tonight's meeting. Let me just go back to the.
Well, there's water resources and other stuff. There's still 5 more things on the agenda.
Yeah. Yep, there we go. And I don't have anything for the water resources, number 11, or for the sustainable environment and land use. There's no updates on that either.
Okay. How about commissioner comments?
I have a comment. I think, Sarah, it's great to have Margaret come to make a presentation tonight. I'd love to get a copy of that PowerPoint, if it's possible, from her.
Yeah, I'll definitely ask her.
And I love any other companies that do similar stuff or other items that we could look at that will diminish our waste and reuse our water and create more energy and all that fun stuff that we're here to do. I think it's great. So more presentations like that, I'm all for it. So thank you.
Yeah, you can take a look at their stock. It's today it's $22.11, but it looks like it's all over the roadmap for the year anyway.
Are they Canadian based? Is that why they're on the
Toronto? Yes. Yeah, Toronto.
Damn Canadians, can't get away from them.
Anyway,
They're a foreign country or something.
yeah, you both asked very good questions. That was very informative.
It was a really good presentation.
Yeah, but you asked very good questions.
Okay. Staff comments?
The only comment I have is that I just want to thank Matt Herrera, who's our IT guy, who's kind of working in the background with us tonight because tonight was his day off. And he agreed to do the meeting anyway. So thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome. No worries at all.
Yeah.
Okay, well, is there a motion to adjourn then?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. See you next month. I like the Mondays.
Thanks, everybody.